The letter had arrived without warning, tucked neatly between bills and advertisements, its presence both ordinary and profoundly out of place. Alara Wren turned it over in her hands, frowning. The envelope was old, the paper thick and yellowed with age. Its edges were curled, and a faint, unfamiliar perfume, a mixture of lilac and something deeper, like old books, clung to it. No return address, no stamp, only her name, written in an elegant, looping script that made her chest tighten. With a strange sense of familiarity, her heartbeat quickened. She sat down heavily at her tiny kitchen table, the city sounds beyond her apartment walls fading into a dull hum. Her fingers trembled slightly as she broke the wax seal. Inside, a single sheet of parchment unfolded easily, as though it had been waiting years just for this moment. Come home, and remember what was lost. That was all it said. Just 8 words, but they hit her like a thunderclap. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was the same careful, graceful style she had seen 1,000 times before, in old recipe cards, birthday letters, the bedtime notes tucked under her pillow as a child. It was her grandmother's handwriting. Margaret Wren, dead these past 10 years. Alara's vision blurred as she blinked hard. This had to be some kind of joke, some mistake. Yet the weight of the letter in her hand said otherwise. Her mind reeled. Why now, after all these years? Why dredge up memories she had buried so carefully? The name on the bottom corner of the letter, Greystone Hollow, ignited 1,000 ghostly images in her mind. Summers thick with the scent of cut grass, long corridors filled with whispers, the towering mansion, Wren House, perched like a sentinel atop the mist-shrouded hill, the place where her childhood had both blossomed and fractured, the place she had sworn never to return. Alara rose from the table and moved to the window, gazing out over the maze of city streets below. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling its pulse. Or maybe it was only her own. Deep down, a part of her already knew she had no choice. 3 restless nights later, she found herself driving along a winding, neglected road, each mile pulling her further from the life she had built and deeper into a past she had tried to forget. Greystone Hollow hadn't changed much. If anything, it looked even smaller, even more forgotten. The gas station was still there, its paint peeling, its windows clouded with dust. The diner still sat stubbornly at the crossroads, its neon sign flickering in the gathering dusk. The people were the same too. It seemed tight-lipped, suspicious, watching her with wide, wary eyes as she fueled up. No one said a word, but she could feel their curiosity prickling at her back as she climbed into her car and pulled away. The road to Wren House was worse than she remembered, overgrown, potholed, hemmed in by dense, ancient trees that leaned together as if conspiring. Fog clung to the ground in thick, ghostly coils. It muted the colors of the world until everything was shades of gray and green. Then, at last, through the mist, the mansion appeared. Alara pulled to a stop and stared. Wren House stood at the top of the hill, just as she remembered, and yet not. Time had not been kind. The stone walls were cracked. The wooden shutters hung crookedly from their hinges. Vines crept up the sides of the building like skeletal fingers clutching at the weathered facade. The windows, so many windows, stared down at her blank and sightless. Still, a strange sort of life clung to it. The way mist curled around the turrets, the faint shimmer in the broken glass, as if the house itself had been holding its breath, waiting. Her throat tightened. She wanted to turn around, to leave the past buried where it belonged. Instead, she got out of the car. The air was damp and heavy. Every step she took toward the front steps echoed unnaturally loud in the thick silence. Her boots crunched on gravel and dead leaves. The great double doors loomed before her, warped with age, the paint blistered and peeling. She reached out, intending to knock, though she didn't know why, when the left door creaked open an inch, as though welcoming her in. Elara froze. A sane person would leave, she thought. A sane person would drive straight back to the city and never look back. Instead, heart pounding, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air inside was cool and musty, thick with the scent of damp wood and faded memories. Dust swirled in the beams of weak evening light that slipped through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. The grand foyer stretched before her, still grand, even in its decay. A sweeping staircase dominated the space, its once polished banisters dulled and splintered. Chandeliers hung overhead like skeletons of their former selves, their crystals dulled by grime. To her right, a doorway led into the parlor. To her left, another hallway yawned into darkness. She heard it then, the faintest whisper of movement, so soft she almost convinced herself she had imagined it. But no, she wasn't alone. A shiver traced her spine. The house was watching her, drawing a steadying breath. She crossed the threshold fully, letting the heavy door swing closed behind her with a booming thud. The sound echoed through the empty halls like a gunshot. "Welcome home," whispered the house. Elara stood in the middle of the old foyer, her heart beating loudly in her ears. The smell of dust and old wood filled her nose. She looked around slowly. The walls were covered in faded wallpaper, peeling off in places. The floor creaked under her boots, as if the house was whispering. With every step she took, a memory flashed in her mind, running through this same hallway as a little girl, laughing, chasing her cousin Jacob. Now only silence answered her. She shook her head, trying to clear away the memories. She needed to stay focused, just look around. Nothing more, she told herself. Then leave. You don't have to stay. But even as she thought it, she knew it wasn't true. The letter had called her here for a reason. She could feel it deep in her bones. The parlor was the first room she entered. She pushed the door open carefully. It groaned on rusty hinges and stepped inside. The room was large and dusty, filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. A big fireplace stood against one wall, its stone face cracked and blackened with age. On the mantel, a single picture frame sat, tilted sideways. Elara walked over and wiped off the dust with her sleeve. It was a photo, a black and white photo of her grandmother, Margaret Wren, holding a baby, her, Elara, smiling in a way she barely remembered. The sight made her throat tighten. She gently set the frame upright again. Something about the way the photo had been left here, waiting, made her feel watched. She turned away and moved toward the big windows. The glass was so dirty, it barely let in any light. Outside, the fog still clung to the trees, thick and heavy. The world beyond the house looked far away, unreachable. A loud thump from upstairs made her jump. She spun around, heart pounding, listening hard. Silence, probably just the house settling, she whispered, but she wasn't sure she believed it. Alara moved back into the hallway. She noticed a small table near the staircase, half buried under a pile of letters and papers. Most of the letters were unreadable. The ink had run, the paper had yellowed, but one envelope caught her eye. It was newer, almost fresh. Her name was written on it. Again, in that same careful, elegant handwriting.